Parents decide to bank their baby's cord blood for unforeseen emergencies, but now it's being used to try and treat autism.
Then we're thinking about putting him in an institution. He was in diapers, he couldn't talk. We spent about $300,000 on biomedical intervention.
Plus, I don't like the idea of selling false expectations to kids. Let's be very, very honest. Everybody doesn't have 15 grand in the bank.
That's today.
Welcome to the show. Co-hosting today is diplomat of the American Board of Neurology and Psychiatry and my good friend, Dr. Ish Major.
Dr. O.
Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. Always a pleasure to be back.
We need your expertise today.
It's a tough show.
All right. Autism affects an estimated 1 in 54 kids in the United States. It's a staggering statistic that cannot be ignored. Our investigative producer, Leslie Marcus, reports on a controversial treatment that some parents are desperate to obtain for their children. Take a look.
Parents decide to bank their baby's cord blood for unforeseen emergencies, but now it's being used to try and treat autism. The stem cell treatment is said to decrease inflammation, stimulate the brain, replace damaged neurons, and improve function. But scientific evidence to prove these benefits is lacking. We uncovered a number of crowdfunding pages where desperate parents seek thousands of dollars to get their children unproven treatments in the U.S. and abroad. But interest and demand didn't happen overnight. Duke University has been running clinical trials testing cord blood for autism since 2014. And I sat down with one family who was part of the initial study. What age was Richie when you started to notice some autism markers?
I would say he was about 2 when we started noticing just some odd things about how he would play with cars, how he would play along friends, delayed speech, delayed potty training.
How did you find out about the Duke cord blood stem cell study?
We banked all of our children's cord blood with cord blood registry when they were born, and we received quite a few emails about studies that were nationwide. And the only one that we seemed to qualify for was the Duke one.
What kind of life were you hoping this treatment would give Richie?
He had been hit by a bus driver when he was in preschool and couldn't tell us. So this was like a great opportunity to give him almost like a sense of independence.
Yeah, we were as optimistic as anybody would be.
That he could, speak for himself and just be independent.
Before you signed on the dotted line, were you made aware of any possible risks?
We didn't hear about any risks when we were signing up for anything that I remember.
How did you explain to your son Richie what he was about to go through?
We told him he was going to get his super blood back. We thought that was really cool when they did the infusion. They actually had like a little superhero sticker on the IV bag as he was getting it.
At what point did you notice a change in Richie?
2 or 3 days after the infusion is when we had that first blowout. He was so violent and angry, and he just said the most horrible things.
That's not our child. That's not something that he has ever or would have ever done before.
And we basically dealt with that for the last
9 years.
9 years. And then
the typical markers, he started hand flapping and twirling.
He started he never hand flapped, but he also did regress in the potty training.
We started having these reoccurring fevers that started showing up. It would almost act as if his body was on fire.
Yeah.
He wouldn't be able to walk. He said his legs were burning.
What kind of tests and procedures did Richie have to go through to get into the study?
They made him drink the Versed, which is horrible and disgusting, and he was gagging and throwing up and just was miserable. Then they did the IV, which hurts, and he's 5.
Do you have any regret doing the study in the first place?
I love our child to death, but it was like having a stranger in our house, for a lack of better words.
Then it was almost like he was like a crazy person in an apartment building. You know what I mean? That would come out and yell at his brother and sister and us.
It was sad. It was very isolating for him. And to go through that when you're 6 years old is not, I don't know if anybody could really understand what was going on.
Leslie joins us along with Ashley and Rich. Ashley and Rich, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having us.
First and foremost, we really appreciate you coming forward and sharing this all-important story. So let's get right into it. What happened when you contacted Duke to tell them that your son had had a bad reaction to the treatment?
We called. I left several messages. The nurse from the study actually called back. I explained to her some of the symptoms we were seeing, the regression, the high fevers, and we were simply told nobody else is experiencing the same thing as you. So we don't.
It was worrisome to us because we called in concern, but then found out that we were probably the only people experiencing this.
So for what we experienced is basically we thought that maybe it wasn't related to the study because that's kind of how they made us feel, and that maybe it was something else going on.
And Dr. Ish, taking a child who has autism and putting them in a clinical trial, just changing their normal routine, and it has issues in itself.
Just the idea of that, right? So if you've got a child with autism, they have this thing that's called sensory perception disorder, right? Any of the five senses, what you see, what you taste, touch, feel, any of those things get out of whack. To them, it's on a 10, whereas to you or I, right, it's on a level 2. So just any of that and the change in the routine, it's so disruptive. It's traumatic for the child and it's traumatic for the parents, right? And so what happened to you guys was horrible because they did two things they should have never done, which is they invalidated your concerns, what you were telling them you were seeing, and they told you were the only ones, right? And there's some shame in that also.
And you asked for the study from Duke, but never received it?
We were under the understanding they propped it up when we first arrived. That was the thing, was we were going to receive the study or
The outcome
of the study before it was released
to the public.
Yeah, before it was published. I'm sorry.
And we actually received a CNN link through a family member that showed the study on another news network. And so at that point, I contacted the study, and I was concerned because they had this miracle show about this fantastic experience, and at the same time, I'm stuck wondering why didn't we have that same experience?
So we didn't have any documentation to see how things panned out for other people or in larger numbers.
Right. So when we called, I actually called the head person of the study, and I explained that we didn't receive any publication, we didn't receive a study, summary. We don't really know what's going on. And I explained, how traumatizing it was, and the response we got was not something that I would expect from a professional. We were told, well, it must have really affected you then if you're still thinking about it after all these years.
Wow. Dr. Ish, I see how you're responding to this, and I am too, that we as doctors,
right?
Sometimes we have to share bad information, right, bad results,
right.
And clearly there's a right and the wrong way to do that, but that's part of the process. It has to be handled the right way, sympathetically, honestly,
gracefully, with a little bit of humanity and maybe a little empathy and compassion. So, Ashley and Rich, I'm curious, how did you help your son overcome the setbacks he experienced after the cord blood stem cell trial?
Numerous therapies, ABA therapy, occupational therapy,
speech therapy. He was in a self-contained program at school to get 100% services during the day. We also have a psychiatrist, a neuropsychiatrist, a psychologist, our pediatrician. So at this point, we have a team who we hold dear to our hearts that are all on the same page, and they just want the best.
And let me pull that out. You have a psychiatrist and a psychologist because you're going to need both.
So how's your son doing now, today?
He's doing remarkably well. He's 13 now.
He's made a huge amount of progress here in the past 6 months, and things are going really well. We have a long way to go, we feel, but we feel like we've come a long way. So we feel positive and feel like we're heading in the right direction.
Well, let's bring parents Gina and Wade into the discussion now, whose daughter was part of the same clinical trial at Duke, but had a totally different experience. Tell us, how were things before your daughter received the stem cell treatment?
So Gracie started showing signs of autism around 18 months old, and by 2 years of age, she had the diagnosis of autism.
What we saw was, obviously the hand flapping, nonverbal, confrontational agitation, definitely tantrums. I mean, tantrums so bad that it would scare her own sister.
It really affected everyday life until we got the email from the company that we banked her cord blood with, saying that there was this study at Duke with the stem cells, and we got her enrolled.
Well, you've been through so much. Let's take a look at Gracie before she had a stem cell infusion.
Blow your candles. Oh.
Ready? I'm on you. 1, 2, 3, go.
Such a beautiful,
Right?
young lady.
Adorable. Yeah. It's hard to understand, right? I come into this world and I don't understand it, and it scares me. And there's a lot of things about this world that irritate me, and I can't tell you how that is. I can't communicate to mom or dad, right? And the way I communicate it to you, it just frustrates everybody. And so it's just hard all the way around. Now, what were Gracie's results? Really curious about this. Following her infusion, how did she do?
Well, interestingly, for us, about the 6-month period, you saw an incredibly marked improvement, robust improvement in all, verbal skills, socialization, everything that, the hand flapping, all of this really subsided.
Yeah.
And you could tell that she was, it was almost a big, it was a hyper light speed improvement in all of the symptoms, or at least the underlying symptoms of autism.
On a scale of 1 to 10, we probably rated it at 8 or 9, her improvement. It was pretty remarkable.
It's incredible.
On that note, let's meet Gracie.
Okay.
Come on.
Hi, Gracie.
Yes,
Hi,
it is.
Gracie.
Hi.
You're on TV. How does that feel?
It feels great.
How are things going these days for you?
It's going really good. I'm in 7th grade now. I'm getting a lot of A's and B's, and I love school.
Gracie, it's so nice to meet you, and you're thriving and smiling, and we're so happy for you. And at the same time, Ashley and Rich, this may be bittersweet.
It is.
Obviously, you're happy for them, but this
Absolutely. It's an amazing story. I'm so thrilled to see her.
you share so many bonds, similar experience,
Yes.
that we sympathize with you, and unfortunately, it's a name of the game that it's unpredictable.
Well, that's where we are in the research, right? We can't predict with any reasonable amount of intelligence what's going to happen from case to case.
Every case is different.
And that's the hard part.
That's why they call it a clinical trial.
Yep.
All right, well, after the break, we'll meet a family who went to Panama and spent $300,000 on autism treatments for their son. Coming up,
We're thinking about putting him in an institution. He was in diapers, he couldn't talk. We spent about $300,000 on biomedical intervention.
then
I don't like the idea of selling false expectations to kids. Let's be very honest. Everybody doesn't have 15 grand in the bank.
that's coming up.
Wonderful pistachios. Get your protein from a greener source. Wonderful pistachios, the original plant-based protein.
Do you struggle with occasional nerve aches in your hands or feet? Try Nervive Nerve Relief from the world's #1 selling nerve care company. Nervive contains alpha-lipoic acid to relieve occasional nerve aches, weakness, and discomfort. Try Nervive Nerve Relief.
USAA is made for the safe pilots. For Mac, who can come to a stop with barely a bottle. Lucia, who announces her intentions even if no one's